YouTube, my name is Laura and today I'm going to be teaching you how to seam with just a single stitch. Seaming is really important to sewing. It has two main purposes. One, it helps bring in the frayed edges that fabric has. Normally, fabric is usually very frayed, so seaming helps make a nice clean cut to the fabric. Second, it's also the reason why two fabrics or three or four fabrics for the more advanced seamsters and seamstresses out there can come together to make clothes and make objects. So today I'm going to show you how to seam, and I'm going to do it with a project that my friends and family recommended to me. They told me that a really good first project to do was to make pillows, but instead of making a pillow, I'm just going to be making mini squares, and we are going to be seaming the sides, and we are just going to practice that way because I thought that would be a really smart way to do it. We are going to be making a seam called the invisible seam, so when you make a pillow and then you turn the fabric inside out, you don't see a seam. It's kind of invisible. It's really cool looking actually when you start thinking of it like that. But that's what we are going to do, so let's get started.
First things first, you need to heat up the iron. I would say you would have to iron every fabric you ever sew because it just gives you a wrinkle-free fabric to start off. So try to iron out every crevice that you possibly can. Once it's completely wrinkle-free, I am measuring 5 by 5 squares, and I am just ticking the marks where 5 inches ends and then using those ticks to draw straight lines. You want to try to be as accurate as possible, so try to focus on this part when measuring. So after you drew your lines, now we're going to cut as straight as you can and as clean cut as you can. When I did this, I still had frayed edges, so it's okay if you do too. I took the square and I used it as a template to make my second square and my third square and my fourth square. So in total, I had 4 squares to make 2 total mini squares. So next, I aligned one square on top of another square, and I'm trying to at least line one side to be completely even. And I flipped it over just to check both sides to make sure the short side was on the up side, so that when you seam it, you don't miss a fabric because it was too short. So after you have your square aligned, you're going to pin it, and I would say pin it about ½ inch. You don't really have to be too accurate as long as the fabric is still aligned together. The whole point of the pins is to make sure the fabric doesn't move, and it's supposed to be a guide for when you seam too. So I was able to fit 4 pins onto one side of the fabric. So let's sew. So I put my stitch setting on 9 or 10, which is a type of single stitch. I played around with both. Your sewing machine is probably different than mine, so I would make sure to find your settings before starting to sew. So I aligned the corner of the pin side, and I set the presser foot down where I wanted to start my seam, and I slightly pressed the foot pedal to get it started, and then manually with the knob I went down and up 2 or 3 stitches just to get it going. Then I did a quick back stitch, which can get a little overwhelming. Back stitches for me tend to go a little fast, and then I slowly seamed forward by pressing my pedal. And when I seamed forward, I removed each pin because I know that advanced seamstresses and tailors say to go ahead and just sew right over the pin, but one time it actually broke my sewing machine needle, so I had to go to the store and buy a new one, and it was just really upsetting. So I'm suggesting to just take the pins out before you sew over them. If you get your pin stuck underneath your presser foot, no worries, just stop pressing the pedal, simply lift up the presser foot, and then just remove the pin. You can just realign your fabric where it needs to be, and you're good to go, and continue sewing. So keep sewing forward as slowly and as you can. When you backstitch, you want to make sure that you backstitch as close to the seam you just made, because you're stitching the two threads together so that it doesn't become undone. That happened to me one time and my fabric became undone just because I kind of lost control and it went off the seam. So as best as you can, just try to keep it as close to the seam as possible. Okay, so here I am starting the second side, and you just want to keep following the steps like you did on the first side. The goal with seaming is to make sure that you seam as close to the edge of the fabric as possible, because that is maximizing the usage of the fabric and you're not wasting fabric. It's okay if it's not completely to the side of the edge, but with time and practice you'll get better and better. So now, after I backstitched the second side, I moved on to the third side, and as you notice, there's completely no pins at all, and that's because two sides have already been seamed, so the fabric isn't going anywhere. So I did a quick backstitch, and this is where seaming really is an art. I mean, it's weird, you can't put too much pressure down, but you want to direct it at the same time, and I think that's where the art comes in. And so again, with practice will make perfect. So after every side, from beginning to the end, after you're done with every side, you should cut off all the hanging thread, because when you go back to sew, it will be completely clean, nothing will get tangled, and you can prevent a lot from happening. So when I was learning how to seam, I did it in spurts because like I would freak myself out and press the pedal too fast and I would lose control. So it's okay if you get off the line and you end up sewing off the fabric. Fear not, the seam ripper is here, and you can literally just, with your seam ripper, cut the seam out from the side, and you can completely redo the seam all over again. So okay, I have 2 squares and 3 sides of it are completely seamed, and as you can see, as I fold it in, I begin making a sort of mini pillow, and on the sides you see the invisible seam right there, so kind of cool. So that is all. We have completely learned how to seam. Doesn't this seem fun?